How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Skip, aka Skip and Tosh here, back with another installment of the Jonathan Hickman Fantastic Four and Future Foundation run. We are almost wrapping things up tonight. We are ending the main storyline, and I brought a few people here with me that you're familiar with to talk about it along the way. First, we have joining us from I think farther down south than our other guest, Ash Vaughn Comics. How are you doing tonight, Ash?
Doing stellar. I read all these issues today. Um,
Mm.
just full disclosure, because my memory fails me and it's difficult. If I read these like a week ago, I would be like having to read them again. Um, and yeah, so I read this today, and I was not prepared. I was not prepared.
No, you were not,
I
my
thought I
friend.
was. I thought I had read enough of this to prepare me. I was not prepared.
No, you were not. And we're going to
Wow.
talk about how unprepared and how wrecked you are after reading this book. Only after introducing our other guest from the South also, but more in the southern part of America than just California. My twin, Zach, how's it going?
What's up, twin? How's it going, man? It's awesome. Uh, I, much like Mr. Von Comics, read through most of these today. So they are some stuff I knew happened, but was revitalized in my brain, and then other stuff I didn't remember happening, and so it's really fresh in my brain. I even took notes. I scribbled notes for this. There's so much. I spent there's so much, y'all, and it's so freaking good. It's like,
It
why can't everything just be written by Hickman? We
written
just need one
by
comic writer. That's it.
all, all hope lies in Hickman, right? All hope
Exactly.
lies in
That's what I'm
Hickman.
saying. That's what I'm gonna say.
Um,
Yeah. But no, I've been looking forward. I was actually kind of bummed we missed. I know last week was Thanksgiving, but I was kind of like, it threw me off. I was like, wait, it's Thursday night. I'm not talking Fantastic Four. Oh, this feels weird.
there honestly was a void. I think that was a little bit of what threw me off. We were talking obviously behind the scenes before we got going. We were talking about Thanksgiving and how everyone's Thanksgiving went. I happened to mention that I was at my parents' house. I ended up leaving early, and I went home and I read comics. But even though I know we had rescheduled for this week, I just couldn't figure out what was missing. Like in my mind, I'd already taken care of it, so I wasn't like, "Oh, there's something unresolved." But there was something missing. There was a void, and it was absolutely, me missing us talking about Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run on a Thursday night. But let me tell you, being here now in this moment, having reread this stuff, I broke it up. I did 4 comics over the last 3 days a day, and man, all the emotions came back. All the emotions came back. Everything that I state and claim to other people, I again put myself through and remembered like, no, I really felt this way. I tell people I laugh, I cried, I get up out of my recliner and cheered, like a fool alone in my room. But damn it, when you're moved, when creatives can really get to the center of us, whatever those emotions are, and really move us to those emotions, and we have a physical response that is difficult to hold back. If we can hold back at all, we really, really, really feel how art transcends the medium that it's delivered to us in, and has an impact on us, on such a personal, intimate level. And Jonathan Hickman did that in a fashion that just no one has any business doing. So with my little blurb that I rolled out, let's go ahead and just let's get going on just initial thoughts, reactions. We're going to get to the moments that we want to talk about individually. We're going to wrap it up towards the end, and then we're going to finish the stream that we're currently on. So for everybody that's watching the VOD, everyone that's watching after the fact, we record these live on twitch.tv/Skip and Tosh. So if you want to watch it live, if you don't want to wait for it, and if you want to go a little deeper, which we do before we record these and especially after, one more time, join us on twitch.tv/Skip and Tosh Thursday nights. Let's call it 9:30 Pacific. Let's call it that. And on that note, I'm going to call it. We're jumping into initial thoughts. My twin,
Yo.
you already dove in, baby, and that was pretty good form. Tell me
Thank
more.
you. Thank
Tell
you.
me more.
Swimming lessons at the Y. They do great things. Yeah, so this is it. This is the big enchilada. Some people, this is where it all comes to a head. It all boils up. The cup runneth over with climax and with third acts and just character moments, and you wonder what's this part like, what was this thing that Hickman wrote, how does this factor in? It all factors in. It's like an impossible math equation where, I remember being in algebra and in calculus, you have, okay, this complication on this side, this equation on this side, and they both come out, you simplify it, and it all boils down. And Hickman does that in comic book. Like, it's unreal how he makes everything fit. The whole War of Four Cities, you have four different factions, a dozen characters, and he just gives them all, they all fit in their own properly shaped places. And it just creates this tapestry. I'm using the $5 words. It's a tapestry of just goodness and awe, and it's just so good, man. It's so good. Oh my goodness! Like it's got. You want a big action set piece, you get them. You want like deep, like character moments and character evolution, and you got that too. Um, there's emotion, there's just there's humor, there's levity, even like perfectly placed in different spots. It's just all so good. And I mean, to be honest, and I've read some of the Fantastic Four runs that have come out post Hickman,
Mhm.
and nothing terrible, nothing shoddy. But man, you compare them to Hickman, and it's like comparing like somebody's stick figures to Rembrandt or Picasso or Michelangelo. Like
Mm.
this is it. I know there's people out there, and they'll say that John Burns' run is the best run, or the original Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And look, I love those guys. I love those books. The stories are a little more simpler, and that's part of their charm. This is more, I mean, I've been saying this from the start. It's more complex, all these different intertwining pieces, gears that are moving. It's very almost Chris Nolan, I think, is who I compare Hickman to a lot. And it's just, it all folds together in such a beautiful way. I'm rambling too, so I apologize. I'm taking up y'all's time. It's A plus plus though. This is one of my favorite comic runs of all time. I'd say top 3 comic runs of all time is Hickman's Fantastic Four. So
Man,
yeah.
that says a lot. That says a lot. That was your platform to ramble. That was Zach's zany rant time. That's where you do it, man. No, you are on brand and on topic. Thank you so much for that. I mean, it really it's difficult to wrap up the magnanimous nature and the greatness and the grand scale of what Hickman set up to fall down. You called it a tapestry,
Hmm.
and I can agree to that. I happen to view it a little bit more like a domino, like a set of dominoes that are set up, and because he very much, and that's what we felt. We felt all the setup, everything, and so many things that upon first reading, initial reading this, maybe don't feel as significant. You don't know, for them all to pay off, and he really banks things. So he'll pay some off along the way, and then he's banking a lot of it. And then once you get to the end, all the dominoes are set up, and they're just cascading. And I just love how it's not always particularly like, yeah, I set up all these things to have easy resolutions. When the dominoes hit the other dominoes, there is a cause and effect. There is a contact a dynamic contact. And he makes us feel that. All of these, like, things compound on top of others. One thing that you just thought was one issue turns into three issues. You know what I mean? And just the nature of how he does it, and especially at the rate that it happens as you ramp up to the end, is just really incredible. Character moments, just cool, zany ideas, excuses to write Star Wars into science fiction based Marvel books. Hickman, you know, once they showed that are gonna let him go full bore,
Hmm.
he went that times 1.5, and we are just blessed comic book fans for it. We're gonna get more into why that is, and certain moments that make us feel those things, that earn this acclaim about this run and our praise that we're given right now. But Ash Von Comics, hit us with it.
Oh, I don't know what to hit with, man. Have you guys? Do you already hit all the notes? So when you presented the plan to double up essentially 2 weeks ago, part of it made sense because we're skipping a week due to the holiday, so it's kind of like a catch up. But I was a little bit apprehensive because it's a lot, not necessarily so much to read, but to cover. And part of it has to do just with me personally. Like I don't have the short term memory that I used to. I have to take extensive notes and stuff. And that when I'm doing that, when I'm trying to read, it also saps kind of the enjoyment. So I don't really want to turn it into like a study session. I want to just read it organically and appreciate it. So there's so much that was happening in the book, and as I was reading it, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna forget this. I'm gonna forget this." And it's not that I actually forget it. It's not like it's gone out of my memory. It's just recalling it to be like, I know that it's there. I just don't know where the file is. I'm like,
Right.
"Oh,
Yeah.
there's all these awesome things," and it's my brain is scatterbrained. But this, what Zach said, I mean, and I don't say this to gloat or anything, but simple fact is I've been reading comics a lot longer than Zach, and I echo his statement. This is one of the best comic runs I've ever read. Um,
Yeah.
so that's more meant to back up his statement. This is astounding. The previous stuff that we've gone over on this channel, on this Hickman run has been great. We've it's all there. We can go back and watch the tape. Um, this was even better. Like the sheer level. Like I think your analogy of the dominoes
Hmm.
is a really good one
I
because
really
it's
like that. Yeah.
because you can see it once you get to this stage. You can go back and see how the previous stuff were really just sort of meticulously setting those dominoes up. That's the it's I hate to say boring. That's not what I'm looking for, but that's the less exciting part is watching. It all get set up, and this what I felt like I read that today was the dominoes all falling, and it's just was epic. It didn't it didn't make me cry, but it certainly made me feel emotional. There were times where I would just have that fist pump moment. It's like yes, or just some like heartfelt moments, man. Like um we'll get to a couple of scenes. There was this one in particular where I just got a lump in my throat and I just had to stop.
Mm.
And it was really cool because the very next page was I'm gonna give it away by this. You guys will both know the very next page was just like a black page. Um, but I'll get to it more. I don't want to bury the lead. Uh, yeah, but I had to stop. Like I literally just had to stop. I couldn't go on, and yeah, I'm thinking about it now, and it just gave me chills. And it's one of my favorite Marvel characters, and Hickman doing right on this character, which I always enjoy when writers take one of my characters that I like and not just do them right, but also sort of like take them to new heights, take them to even better places than I've seen them so far and make me like them even more. But then also having a little bit of bittersweetness to it as well. But I just felt so good, like not good, like in a joy, like it just, man, it just made the story so powerful. Um, Now I gotta say, this was a difficult read in the technical sense because when you said you wanted to read it in the order that the comics came out, I don't have the floppies. I have the trades, and unfortunately, the trades are Fantastic Four 600 through 606 or whatever 605, and then FF 12 through 16. So I had to go back and forth, like read an issue, then go to this one, read an issue, go back. And I'm doing it digitally because I own them digitally. And so that was, I think at some point I got out of order where, because that's another thing. The Marvel, they doesn't tell you, it doesn't say like, oh, this is this issue.
Yeah.
It just goes to the next chapter.
Part 2.
And so
That's my
3.
biggest issue with this is it doesn't label if you're reading Fantastic Four or Future Foundation. It just goes. I think it goes along in order, but it's confusing because I want to keep track and know what issues are what.
Yeah,
and
it really
doesn't tell you.
annoys me that they don't just use the comic cover as like the chapter breaks.
Right.
Because I was like, okay, I got to read Fantastic Four 602, and then after that I read. But I'm like, I don't know which issue is which. So what I did was I just started with Fantastic Four, read it until it felt like that was the end of the issue, and then I just swiped over to the other comic and then read that issue, and I just went back and forth. But then it was working out okay for like the first couple of issues, and then I was like, wait a second, I feel like I'm behind in the story.
Yeah, especially
and,
issue
so I was like,
issue 600 is like almost 100 pages, so that can throw you off too because it's like a really big issue.
Sure. Yeah, so right around the time with Johnny Storm coming back. Well, not Johnny Storm. When the adult kids show up. I was like, wait a second. I already read, so I was like, I felt like I just got to read 2 issues to catch up, and I did. I made this decision because I didn't want to go and try to research and figure. Like, it was such a pain. I was like, I'll just read it to what feels like the best. But unfortunately, what that meant was I read FF16 before Fantastic Four 605, and I believe chronologically that's flipped.
604 is supposed to come before Future Foundation.
Yeah, 604, sorry.
Yeah, number 16.
Yeah. So basically the last issue we were supposed to read tonight was the FF16, and so that was like the ending, but I read that before 604. But I'm kind of glad I did because both of them have awesome endings.
Yeah.
But the end, that Fantastic Four ending was just lump. And I think it hit me better in a dramatic sense. Yeah.
Told you it comes full circle.
So yeah, that's my overview of my just gut reactions of the book, and super stoked. Like I am blown away. I knew that I liked this. I knew that I did, but this took it to the next level. This took it to that level of, this is seriously, and I've read a lot of Marvel comics dating back. I usually don't go back beyond before the 70s because I'm not really a Silver Age person. So from the late 70s up, I've read a lot, and I try to make it a point to read all the best stuff. There's a few things on my bucket list that I haven't got to, but I people say like this is one of the best. I go, I'll read it because I want to know. I want to be able to gauge. And this stands up there. I have not read. I'm not a huge Fantastic Four guy, but I feel very confident in saying I don't believe that there's a better Fantastic Four run in existence. Like, I haven't read the Byrne Fantastic Four because like I just wasn't a fan. I plan on that. Like, this book made me more of a fan. Made me very excited too, but I just know that it doesn't get as good as this because I've read the best of I've read the Miller of Daredevil, I read the Claremont X-Men's, I've read the Simonson Thors, I've read the great runs of Marvel comics of all time, and this holds up. It's right there. In some ways, it's better. It does things that none of those runs did. Man, this is definitely the most epic.
Oh yeah.
This makes Endgame look small potato.
Right?
Like
Like,
seriously,
could you see if they actually adapted this story? Like, if they had the Fantastic Four in the MCU, could you see if they had like this could be way bigger than Endgame? If
way
they had
bigger.
like the proper, like with proper, setting up and building with proper, like I think you would have to have Hickman be a writer or at least have a lot of input into it. But yeah,
Especially now
easily.
that Marvel, I get it. Marvel didn't have the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and the Sony the Spider-Man stuff. That was a huge thing for the MCU to be missing.
Yeah,
It's hard to do. But now that they have all that, man, if I'm Kevin Feige, I'm finding a way to tell this story.
yeah,
After I was like, and they still can. It's not even like this is out of the question. After they
yeah.
do this whole phase 5, 6, whatever Kang stuff, I would love to tell this because this is huge. And you know what? I have a little bit of maybe some optimism because they still haven't even mentioned Doctor Doom. So it
That's
makes me
right.
very hopeful that Feige is like, no, this is a character that must be saved for last. We can't, you know what I'm saying? Because like, how do you
Yeah,
top? People are like, how do you top Thanos? I'm like, I'm Doctor Doom.
easily.
you know,
Yeah,
but non-Marvel fans don't get it, and I'm like, Thanos is badass, like for sure, but he's not the supreme villain in the Marvel universe by any means. And Kang's a cool one. I'm glad we're doing this Kang story. I'm very excited. But if you're gonna do a part 3, like if you take Thanos as one big huge arc and then the Kang is another arc and you're like, we're gonna do another big third epic arc as Doctor Doom,
gotta
then
be
do this. do this. Oh, I want to see Annihilus and the Inhumans and
Annihilus. Ah,
the bringing the Kree. We've already been introduced to the Kree, so we got a little bit of taste for that.
we know who the Inhumans are. I mean, most people try to forget that, but we do know they have had the Inhumans appear before. You just got to make them more appealing. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
Lost Sheep. I appreciate that's a very good compliment. You don't want to see me as cast as Doctor Doom. You can cast me as one of Doom's lackeys. That would be fun, but
Ash
no.
as a Doom bot.
Yeah, I have really been thinking hard, like who I would cast as Doctor Doom, and I can't.
it's difficult, right?
I can't. Now I've heard rumors that they're looking at Cillian Murphy, and I was like, I have no idea if that's a wild made up rumor or not, but I'm like,
Yeah,
I could almost that's almost interesting enough. Um
Yeah, yeah.
with cool voice, with the sound effects and stuff, they could really process his voice
yeah,
um to make it sound, because he's in the mask, and in my
yeah.
head I always hear James Earl Jones
Oh,
when I do James Earl Jones talking in a Eastern European accent.
mhm. Yeah.
That's my head canon Doctor Doom.
Yep. I would do Rami Malek.
Mm,
Oh,
yes,
Mhm.
especially
I
since you're
like
never
that.
going to see his face. Rami
Yeah,
Malek's eyes.
his eyes are really expressive.
Imagine that behind the square eye slits. Rami Malek. Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and he's a good actor. Yeah,
That that
good
would
call,
that would
Skip.
definitely have to be a requirement. Is you would have to have some really expressive eyes, because especially if all you're seeing is that's the only part of his face that you see. So yeah, I like that. Remy Malik, I like that. I had considered him.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, we know who we want to see next in the MCU. We know who they have to build up to. We know that if the MCU ever wants to top the Infinity Saga, all hope lies in Doom. On that
Amen to
note,
that.
Yes.
amen to
Ah.
that. And to think, and I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait for that. That's got its time and place. Oh, that's got its time and place. But on that note, let's go ahead and get into those moments that just sank this run into our comic book hearts and won't let go. Twin, twin, I'm pulling my twin card. I'm calling upon you first, my friend. Throw that moment out there. Hey, we're
Ah.
gonna we're it's this time around. I say we go back to 2. I think we
Two.
at least have to do 2 this time around.
I have 7 or 8 written down here.
Hey, it's not limited to that. Right after that, we're gonna go into
I
to
got you.
free talk, but let's do
This
2
is
moments
so
this time.
much.
There
It's like
there
12
is.
comics worth of material.
It's like I
Hmm.
feel like a little kid when I used to go to like Shoney's, the buffet restaurant. I feel like trying to fit everything onto my plate, and I know I'm not gonna be able to eat it all, but it all looks so darn good.
Yep.
Oh, oh my goodness! It's like, where do I start? Do I do a funny? Do I do a serious? No, actually, I know where I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start with this. It was a feels one for me. It hit me, and it's just a really cool scene. So comic books being what they are, and Skip, I'm actually gonna try to give you a page. They don't do page numbers in here. Dadgummit. I think
Hmm.
it's gotta be Fantastic Four 600 maybe with the Steve
600.
Epting art. I believe it is.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to give you. I think it is Fantastic Four 600. I
Okay.
could be wrong. It's the return of Johnny Storm.
All right. I
I was
got
trying
you.
to build up to it. Um, and part of me is like, oh wow, he hasn't really been dead for very long. And of course, it's comic books. Nobody stays dead in comic books, except unless your name is Uncle Ben. Um, but the way that they bring him, and then they explain too, like they go into like his time in the negative zone, which I actually really enjoyed that story. But
Yes.
his return, um, so setting the scene here. Spider-Man's going back to the Baxter building. Reed sent him there to check on the kids. He finds a bunch of these Annihilus bugs. They're out. They're trying to open the gate to let Annihilus in. And so Spider-Man, being Spider-Man, he's gonna fight them all off. He's throwing some one-liners around. The gate opens. He turns around. And why did I close my book when I'm wanting the scene right here? He turns around, so the gate opens. He's like, "Oh no!" It's opening more. He's a bright light shining in his eye, and it's even before this one. It's like his very first. Well, no, I mean that's a good place to pick it up too. But like the very first panel where you see Johnny come back, and Spider-Man's like, "Oh my God!" and Johnny's just standing there on fire. He's like, "Pete, what the heck are you wearing?" like not even phased. Like the guy is back from the dead, and he's like, "What on earth? I haven't seen you in a while, but what on earth are you even wearing right now?" And so that's where it picks up, and then we go to the scene like you have right there on the screen. He's like, "What do you?" And Pete sees him, and he's again. I said this a lot last time, but just like the whole brotherhood friendship between Pete and Johnny. Pete is just like overcome with emotion. He's like, "You're alive!" Just okay, put me down, guy, put me down. And then like it goes further, and you see like Reed and Sue see Johnny, and Sue starts crying. All the happy tears because I mean they all went through, just. Oh, actually, no. Sue's crying. Actually, I know. No, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack. Johnny says, "There's something I got to do. Pete, hold my Annihilus for me." There's a whole little sub story
Oh
there.
man, that was a
Hold
funny
my
line.
Annihilus. So,
That's such a
and you're like,
great
"Well, where's he
line.
going?" And then you see Sue crying. Ben's looking up at the sky. He's like, "What's going on?" And then, like the very next page, he does that thing where he does the flaming four signal in the sky, and everyone knows that Johnny's back. And so just this way that because he's Johnny Storm, he's the flashy member of the team. So of course he cheats death and comes back. Of course he's gonna do it in a big flashy way.
Dude, this
And
scene got me.
right? And then
Good
like
call, man.
the thing who was just panels before getting his ass whooped by these robots, now all of a sudden he's got like his second wind. And it's just such a good. I'm very critical of comic book resurrections because they're a dime a dozen now. But this is one that I will give a pass. This is wonderfully done.
For the way
Um,
that they do it,
yeah,
it's so sensical. Like you're like,
mhm,
oh, like it doesn't feel contrived.
right.
So many comic resurrections are just BS because I feel like they want to kill the character to like make a big splash, but when they do it, they never actually had like an idea of how to bring the character back. Like I think like the
Right.
writers were like, yeah, we're gonna kill him, but the comic publisher obviously is like, well, we got to bring the character back, and so they always come up with this really stupid, contrived. Oh, look in their back, like whatever.
Yeah. So like
But they had a plan.
perfect example in Secret Invasion, they kill the Wasp by turning her, like the Skrulls turn her into a black hole basically, and she absorbs herself and dies. And then like a year later, oh, she didn't really die. She shrunk down to like the microzone, or like they have in the new movie coming out. She shrunk down to the
Right.
subatomic level. Like, but she was a black hole. How does that make you shrink? Like, come on, guys. So yeah, I mean, you're right. When you read into it and then you find out like what happens to Johnny in the negative zone and the science kind of behind it all, science. Uh, yeah, it's very sensical. It makes a lot of sense. So yeah,
Well, he
love
the
this
thing
scene.
is he sort of didn't really die.
Yeah,
He did die technically, but he died in the sense of like how people die on the operating table
right,
Yeah.
and they're dead for like a few minutes and then they get brought back.
right. Because
That's
in
what
the
happened to
negative zone,
Johnny.
that's what you do. In the negative zone, it's like backward. Like when you die, you don't really like you can come back in the negative zone. So
Yeah, and so
yeah.
we presumed he was dead, or at
Mhm.
least that was the writer's intent. Obviously, we're all reading this as back issues. We all know that Johnny's going to come back somehow.
Right.
But I'm right with you, man. That Fantastic Four shot, or sorry, the Flaming Four.
Yep.
The page preceding that is so masterfully done.
Mhm.
Like the way that Hickman focuses, or Hickman and Epting. I don't want to drop the artist.
Yeah.
Focus on Reed and Sue. Like
Mhm.
it's not important that we see what they see, at least not yet.
Right.
It's important to see them. They're the emotional catalyst for us. And then too, I just love Ben. Ben's been getting pulverized by these. What are these things, by the way?
They're Kree robots or something. They're Kree. I know that.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
they're
I was
like
like, they're kind of
Kree
like Sentinels, but
robot
not.
soldiers.
Okay. So
Yeah.
he's getting pummeled by these, and yeah, just he's laying on there. He's like, "What? What's going on?" He's like, "Oh," and it's such a good page turn. Like you flip the page, and then you
Mhm.
get to see what they're looking at. And you're like, "Oh," and you feel that too. It's like he knows how to manipulate your emotions in a good way. Like he knows how to get the reader direct those emotions exactly down the path I want. And bravo, man,
Mhm.
bravo, you guys. And there's no there's
And
no Johnny Storm at all in any of these pictures. That's what's so great.
no, and one other little thing that I like here, and I like here as I'm looking at this picture with the four in the sky, and then you see like the Kree warship. So I like the civilians because they're all like, "Oh, New York's under attack, aliens!" But I just love seeing like they're thinking probably like the sky is falling, end of the world, but then they look up and Johnny does like it's supposed to be like this beacon of hope type thing, or this rally symbol kind
Yeah.
of. And like we see that happen with the Thing. The next page, he gets back up and he starts pummeling on these Kree robots. So I love that also, just like that whole sense of hope
Yeah,
that he
you can see
brings
look at
in
the
with them.
people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like cuz you got to the context here is that this whole city is getting bombarded like the first Avengers movie, right? Like the
hmm
alien invasion, and they ought to look up in the sky and they see the Fantastic Four symbol, which means something to these people. Like that's
right,
the Fantastic Four. Like, and it's like, don't worry, we got you, and it's just
yeah.
man, the feels, and it's
hmm
just done in such an elegant way.
It
There's
is.
not a word on that page.
Nope.
Nope.
Ah,
Get goosebumps.
yeah, and then immediately following the reveal, we get this really really cool like. So what happened to Johnny Stormwall this whole time storyline? And um it is such a freaking
What
cool.
happened when Johnny in the
Yeah, it
negative
is a
zone?
freaking cool story. Like that could be a movie in itself. It's like it kind of reminded me a bit of like Planet Hulk. Um a shorter,
Yeah.
type of version, but that sort of same story idea. This character out of his element in a weird place, and he gets put back together by the Annihilus insect technology, and uh just I just loved seeing this story because not only was it cool knowing, hey, what happened to Johnny Storm, but I have never been a big Johnny Storm fan because to me he was always kind of a bit of a punk, and I don't begrudge anyone that does like him. I'm not saying like he's a bad character. He just subjectively wasn't appealing to me. I don't really like the brash loudmouths. That's why it took me forever to like Spider-Man. You know, I just those type of characters typically aren't my thing. And so Johnny is like my least favorite of the Fantastic Four because of that reason. But this story, not only is it a cool adventure story in this weird realm, but what it changes Johnny, what he leaves this story, you know, and there's a scene, I'm trying to remember exactly where it's at, where he finally comes out and the they're like, you look older, like, and they're commenting on that, and it's because of this. Like, first of all, he aged. He was probably gone longer in the negative zone than in real time.
Yeah, I think they say he was gone like the equivalent of 2 years in the negative
Um,
zone. I think 2 or 3
so
years, maybe.
he's aged up, so he's matured, but also he's you know, life things that can happen to you can like make you grow up, right? They talk about all the time, like with kids when they
Mhm.
go through tragedy and stuff, it makes them grow up. What he had to go through, and this little crew of I forget what they're called. Was it what were they called? The Bright Lords or something?
Oh,
The
light
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 brigade.
Brigade,
Brigade.
which I had totally forgotten about. When you go way back in the
Right?
beginning of the story, you get those Inhumans who are like, "Oh, we're gonna send them off to go die or something," and it's like it's some test of honor. And I'm like, some
Yeah.
test of honor is to go die? I was like,
Mhm.
this doesn't make sense, but whatever. It's just flavor. Should know better. Jonathan Hickman. Everything matters. And here we get the Light Brigade in here, and they
Yep.
are badass. I'm like, dude, I don't want a Light Brigade comic. Like,
Right?
yeah, and just the end of that story with when finally they topple Annihilus, and how they do it with the main, what you think is the leader of the brigade, that horse guy, and they come up with this plan, and he basically takes Annihilus's weapon like through his gut, like fights him, and then that allows
Mhm.
Johnny to tackle Annihilus, and then separates him from his weapon, which is what they found out is where he put the cosmic rod. He embedded it in there, and so he they he's able to fly up and get it. And you don't really see the battle, which is fine. You don't really need to. You just get to see the end scene where it's Johnny standing there and he's like, "Open the gate," and he's in the new costume that we saw, and he's holding Annihilus, you know, on a chain, like it's like a gimp, and you're just like, "Damn, Johnny! Holy crap!" All the times, like the previous setup, you've just been kind of messing up, and you've been getting like Reed having to talk with you and be like, "Dude, you gotta like grow up and think about what you know." This is like Johnny's redemption story. Is like, I am my own man now. I took care of business. And I was like, and I just wanted
Yep.
to applaud. I was like, you, good for you, Johnny.
Yeah, man, it was
Lost Sheep's
incredible.
horse guy has a name.
Totally.
I forgot his name.
Yeah, he has a name. I forgot what it was, dude. But I was loving it because, like, so in the negative zone, they're slaves to Annihilus, so they have to go fight these arena fights, these gladiator fights. And so they show the scene where like these two Annihilus bugs are escorting Johnny, and Johnny's like, "Yeah, I thought I was having a bad day, but then I thought to myself, hey, at least I'm not on fire." And he just blows up the two bug guys. Like he just like is complete. He's such a badass, but he still has like that reckless personality that Johnny still has, or he just like because he knows when he dies, he won't really die. They'll bring him back. So he's just like setting bugs on fire
Oh
left
yeah,
and
and
right.
his
I
power has
love it.
seemed to really elevate too. Like now he can
Yeah.
like cause people to just internally combust. It was making me think
Hmm.
about how they evolved Sue's power. Like she used to just make bubbles, but
Yeah.
now she can like
Hmm.
do things like make things bubbles in people's bodies. She can do all this like insidious stuff. And I was like, oh man, when Johnny just like points his
Yeah.
fingers and bugs explode, I was like, dude, damn.
Yep. I love his little gladiator moment. He's like, "You want to be entertained? Are you not entertained?" Like he just blows them all up, and then yeah, he gets cut in half by a nihilist, and then he wakes up off the operating table again. Uh, but
FYI,
yeah,
Cal Blackbane is the name of the horse
Kyle
guy.
Blackbane. Yep.
there you go,
Cal,
Blackbane.
like Kal-El.
Yeah,
Cal Blackbane.
gotcha. So yeah, Johnny's whole little adventure in the negative zone.
Super
That
cool.
was
Yeah, and
amazing.
it really informed, like I said later when they kind of see him, I'll kind of have that reunion. It's like, oh, you kind of like your age. Like you can just see like Johnny's not just the little hotshot kid anymore. He's matured and he's a force to be reckoned with. And I like that growth.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'll add this part because that was a part that was really good to me too. So I'll just tag my moment onto this one because this was one of the ones that I was going to bring up. And I'll also say this for people that are keeping any kind of tabs on the next thing that Jonathan Hickman writes, you'll probably remember that we haven't seen a lot, but there's been like a cosmic thing where we see a bunch of stars and there's this, statement written out and it's talking about how there's what happens when the natural order of things is interrupted by XYZ. Well, that is something that, again, Jonathan Hickman had been seeding for a while. He does this intentionally. It's like a psyop type thing. Um, he like I mentioned it before. He kind of has these motifs that he'll drone on or kind of, you know, put in there, and it'll kind of be a bit of like a comic book reading meditation, if you will. But I'm tacking my moment on to that Annihilus fight between Annihilus and Johnny when he's got the Light Brigade with him and they're executing their plan, and now it's time to bum rush Annihilus and see what you can get out of there. His axe type weapon thing, yes, has the cosmic control rod on it. And from a writing perspective, but also an artistic perspective, I just really like this part. It reads, "See, there's a natural order of things. From a dense hot state, our reality exploded into existence. But as soon as it was born, our universe began dying. Equilibrium and thermodynamics have left you no other choice. Do you want to be a slave to fate, a servant to your eventual demise, or do you want new rules for a new life?" As we see, like it had faded to black as they both reach for a weapon, and then we start to get a little bit of an image to make out. And it's interesting because what we zoom back from had also visually been seeded again. Hickman using symbology. Uh, it had been seeded as the symbol for the church. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting their name. It was like the
The
negative,
Antichrist?
the
Is it the
antichrist, and the
Antichrist?
yeah, and their like little church thing that they had. I think it might have even been called the anti-church or whatever. I can't remember, but it was their symbol, and we were used to seeing that, and it was a minus symbol,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we see, but it's glowing orange instead of normally we would see it. I think in like black or white or green. We go to the next page and we zoom out of that image even more, and you can also think of it like, oh wait, no, that's not a minus symbol. That's the symbol for the cosmic control rod inside of a circle, which is what Nihilus had to control and be the king of the annihilation wave within the negative zone, which is what that whole church was set up to do, to, go and open up the gate to bring Annihilus back. And as we're zooming back out of that symbol visually, it says everything dies, question mark, and then we see that that thing is actually zooming back out, and it's the pupil of Johnny's eyes glowing bright orange, and it says no, everything lives. And it's this guy Johnny, like with the cosmic control rod in his arm. He's got a nihilist looking like a sub on a chain with a choker around him. Bro, he's
Yeah.
ready, man.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, that whole thing was just like visually how they did it,
Mm-hmm.
symbolically how they seeded it to us way earlier on. How that symbol was the thing of like that's Johnny got that girl and brought her back to the Baxter building. She ended up being a bug who was a part of the church with the anti-priest that represents that symbol. That set up his first failure where he put everybody in danger. He had to grow from that moment. Reed talked to him. There was that whole moment. Ended up sacrificing himself for the kids. Man, he all of that got seeded way earlier on, and look at what it turns into in this moment. Just incredible creative decisions by the creative team of Epting and Hickman and Eaglesham when he was working on it earlier, and everybody, man. I mean, you're scratching the ceiling of the height of the comic book craft, especially for the superhero genre. When you set up and execute on this type of level, it's ridiculous how great
It is.
that is.
And it's not even done with that. The sort of part that I was looking for, I was this whole time we're talking, that scene, I think it's ahead of that where Zach just covered, where the Johnny does the 4, and then there's a couple of pages ahead of that, and he gets a little reunion with the Fantastic Four, and Captain America starts giving his like plan. It's like, okay, well, we got to do this thing, and he's kind of giving his orders and everything, and he's talking to Blackbane. He's like, "What's your name, son?" And Johnny introduces him. He's like, "Cal, this is Captain America." Blah blah blah. And he goes, and Cap says this this saying that, of course, he doesn't recognize. Like, I don't know what that means. Blah blah. Anyways, they're talking, and Iron Man's talking too, and they're saying, out with it. Do you have some way to lead your people to victory out there? And Blackbane just responds, "You misunderstand, Captain. It's not I that leads here. It is he." And he points to Johnny. And that was the moment where I was like, yeah, my boy's grown up, like, because before Johnny was just sort of the punk kid kind of guy. Now he's the leader. Like this team of badasses that they, at first in the story, they didn't even really accept him much. And now they're following him. And at this time, remember, the whole Kree Navy is bombarding Earth, and it just looks hopeless. And one of the guys chimes in. He's like, "We've established connection, Monarch. We are ready for amplification. Good. Engage the obelisks. Expand the gate." And Johnny says, "I believe the question was, how can we defeat an entire Kree armada? It's simple. I have my own." And he raises his arm, which he has the cosmic control rod. And then you flip the page, another great page turn.
Yeah.
The Annihilation Wave. And Johnny Storm has control of the entire Kree fleet. You're just like, dude, the epicness of these stories. And this is just the beginning. This is just like the first book.
This is the first act. Like, the whole climax has like 3 acts. This is just the first one.
Yeah. And I was like, dude, like seeing like all this, and all this was like put into motion, before. And oh man, again, dominoes. This is where the dominoes begin to fall. Yeah.
I like it. He's like, "You guys want to see my battleship?"
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like, even though he's grown, right?
Right. He still has that flashy, that sense of flash and arrogance, kind of like that childlike arrogance, kind of.
He's still Johnny Storm, man.
That's right.
He like, you can grow the boy into a man, but he's still gonna be who he was, man. He's still Johnny Storm, just new and improved, man. You love to see it. Ash, are you tagging on moments to this one? Do you have one in particular that you want to jump to? What's your
and
what's
the moment that my moment is at the end, and I don't know if we want to get to that right now.
I know what Ash's moment is.
Yeah, I know what his moment is. Well, like when I got to that moment, I was like, that's Ash's moment. And I'm not gonna get ahead of his
2 moments. It's two moments in the end.
2 moments at the. Okay, well let's go to the first moment at the end then.
One is the FF end, is a super moment, and the other one's the Fantastic Four end, which is a super moment. And it's two of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe.
Which one you want to go to first?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Should we go all the way to the end first, or should we save it?
Well, me and Zach just did a moment each. Like, I mean, if you want to do yours back to back, you can. Me and Zach can.
No, I'm just saying that's like it's the end of the book. Like,
Oh, that's fine. Yeah,
you know,
because we're just discussing it the way that we want to discuss it. We definitely don't have to go in
okay.
chronological order. We are
I
free from
just
those restraints.
um. All right. Well, let's go with I think I talked about this before the actual recorded stream, where I read this a little bit out of order. So the way, if you're reading these as they came out monthly in the floppies, you would have read FF issue 16 before Fantastic Four 604. And I read those reversed because I got mixed up with the trades and stuff. So I'm kind of glad that I did. I don't think it ruins anything. You can read them either way. The way Hickman tells these stories is really well done. I believe you could probably just read the Fantastic Four books without the FF books, and I think you'd follow the narrative. But I don't think you want to. I don't think you'd want to cheat yourself of such a good story. So I don't know exactly the page number here, but it's at the end of. Oh wait, I gotta swap. I'm on the wrong thing. It's in the end of FF. You probably have the compendium, so it's. Behave me, iPad. Behave.
Is it after the last Dragata page?
It's yes. It's yes. You know exactly where.
Yeah, I got you.
You got me.
There's no way to pick just.
Well,
it
actually starts with the last Dragata page.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, it doesn't. Kinda. Well, I mean, the last panel on the Dragata page basically is Val talking. They're having a little intervention with Val basically now that like everything's all over and like, okay, Val, we know you saved the whole existence, but you're grounded because you disobeyed. And to me, it was like a weird thing. Like, I guess you got to discipline her. Like, you can't be doing this. You can't be keeping secrets. You can't. We get it. It worked this time, but and so they're like, promise us you're not going to tell us. You know, and she's like, yes, Dad. I won't keep any more secrets ever. I promise. I swear. Which you just know is like total lie. Like that. It's like, come on. And then you get to the next scene, and we get to see. I believe this is Steve Epting art. Really cool. He draws Doom really cool. And we cut back to Doom. Now, for those of you that may have not read this, or shame on you if you haven't read this, but if if you have, you just kind of forgot that Doom was left dead. Everyone was like, because he had to self-sacrifice in order that everyone could live, and that was like the big thing. Like this whole plan hinged on Doom, and it was like, well, what's the hard thing? Like, because all these different things were being employed by Reed's dad. And he's like, no, that's not even the hard part. And they're like, well, what do you mean? What's the hard part? The hard part is getting Doom to sacrifice himself. And you're just like, oh, shit. Like, that's like the one hardest thing to ever do in this world would be getting doomed. And so they leave him in the whatever this zone was where they.
Like the hub or.
Yeah,
the
hub. Yeah, where the Council of Reeds were, and they got all annihilated.
Yeah.
Yes. Through
and
the
so
bridge.
Doom bought him time so that they could all escape, but Doom was facing the Celestials. Like, it's a bad moment too. I might have should have picked maybe that moment, but we'll cover that, I'm sure. Anyways.
Oh yes.
So we at this whole point, the book's been like leaving. It's like, oh yeah, there's no way Doom lived. There's no way. Like, and of course I'm reading this and I'm like, as a reader, I know you're lying to me. This is an untrustworthy narrator because there's no way Doom's dead. And sure enough, he's left for dead. And we get this kind of voiceover, and it's what's her name? Val. She's the voice. That's how we know this panel informs is like a secret gift from me to you. And we're sort of hearing his voice. So Doom kind of like wakes up in this rubble. And you're like, secret gift, what? And Doom walks over to this panel, and he comes across a body, and it's one of the dead Reeds. Remember from before when he had the Infinity Gauntlet? So Doom puts the Infinity Gauntlet on. You're like, well, this isn't good. And then you just see the word off panel, Doom, question mark, and you turn the page, and it's all the dooms. Remember, the Council of Reeds kept
Yes.
the
All the
dooms,
all the
and
lobotomized nooms, yeah.
yeah, and he's just looking around, and they're like, "Doom, doom, doom, doom," chanting, raising their fists, and you're just like, "Oh my goodness, what's scarier than Doctor Doom with an Infinity Gauntlet?" I'm sorry, make that 2 Infinity Gauntlets. um, Doctor Doom with 2 Infinity Gauntlets with an army of Dooms worshiping him. I was just like, what? And he's like, here I can build. I was like,
Yeah.
and then you flip the page, the Parliament of Doom. Which, of course, that'd be like you'd have the Council of Reeds, the Parliament
Mhm.
of Doom. And I
Ah,
was
Yes.
like,
it's
oh, man.
that's your end credit stinger. If this is a movie, that's your end credit setup for the next one.
Yeah, like that was just such a cool. I love Doom, but I love him as a villain. I don't ever want to see. He's not. I don't want him to be a hero. I like that he can be instrumental in saving the day because Doom is always going to serve his self interest.
Mhm.
But ultimately, I like seeing Doom being a really great villain, and I like him being scary. And I like stories like this. I like seeing reveals like this because I'm like, oh crap, this just made Doom even scarier. Like that's what villains should be. Now, when you bring Doom back, as all comic villains do, they return. Like they don't. I don't want to see like some in modern day comics. So many villains become chumps, right? Think of like the Batman Rogues Gallery or the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery. Like,
Mhm.
does Spider-Man like have any trouble beating up like Vulture or Doc Ock or like no? They're like all
No.
chumps now because of the power
Right.
escalation. But the good villains, you're like, oh man, every time Doom comes back, he's just even worse than before. Like he's just like, ah. So yeah, there's I love that. And then the art just sells it too. I mean, Steve Epting just kills it with him. So that was really cool. And I'm as good as this ending was, as good as this was, like I said, I'm glad I read this out of order because this would have been the final thing. Cutting over to Fantastic Four, um, this one is takes place over a longer period. Um, what's the moment? Um, man, the moment though is for me, and you can find this skip because I'm sure you'll know where it is better.
I gotcha.
It's the part where they talk about every boy needs a father,
Oh,
and
I know exactly where you're talking about, I think.
yeah, so and it's basically where they're explaining that this has all gone wrong. Like where Reed's dad is like, it's I've done this so many times over and over, and every time we lose. Like there are certain
Mhm.
events in that just are what do they call it? Like cosmic constants or
Universal
something.
constants.
Universal
Universal
constants
constants.
that they
Yeah.
just can't be changed. And no matter how you manipulate the timeline, certain things are always going to play out a certain way. Like Reed is always going to walk through the portal to the Council Reed. Like, and okay, yeah, right here, you got the page. Cool. And so we see last panel on the left. You see, son, this was the day all your sins caught up to you. The day you died, meaning Reed, right? So, but Franklin figured it out, and he wouldn't have it. He wouldn't stand for it. Now Franklin's fighting all the Celestials right now. This is
Mhm.
happening. Um, he wouldn't stand for it. Every boy deserves a father. How did it come to this? And then Reed's like, how did this all happen? You walk through the bridge, Sue says. So if he, no, there are universal constants, things that always happen. You always walk through the bridge. You always meet the council. You always meet all those yous. With them, you always build suns and save universes. And with them, you always make mad space gods. Or you always wake the mad space gods, and then they always destroy the council. I've always helplessly watched as even though you walked away, you always paid the price for being a part of it. I watched and there's nothing I can do. and you're seeing Franklin get fried, and all this is like tragic stuff's happening. It's so epic. But that's how it is for any parent, isn't it? You can do everything you can, you do your best. Then one day you're finished, and your children have simply become who they're going to be. And we see Franklin pulling out this orb that he kind of made with his younger self. I'm not 100% sure what that is. You can explain afterwards if you know more insight.
Yep.
This is who your son will be. This is who he is. Rise. And he uses this orb, and the orb
Mm-hmm.
flies down to the dead Galactus body. Throughout all of
Mm-hmm.
space and time, the devourer of worlds has had many heralds. Rise, says Franklin. Franklin has only had one. To me,
Yes.
my Galactus. And he's so, oh my goodness. And like I said, this plays out over a long period, but see, you skip ahead a little bit. So last couple panels on the left page, or turn the page. Last couple panels of reads like, oh, you think I made the wrong choice? And Val's just like, because you did. And then Reed just looks solemn, and Sue's like, I still don't understand. And then Dad explains, all this came from the Reed joining the council, being a part of all those Reeds trying to make better worlds. And now we see Harold Galactus fighting the
Celestials.
the Celestials, which, by the way, the previous Galactus just got killed fighting him. the regular Galactus. So now we've got Galactus 2.0 fighting him. He left them because he refused to make the sacrifice each of them had. He refused to abandon those that he loved for the greater cause. They put the well-being of the multiverse ahead of the few, their families. It was a logical, rational choice, but it was the wrong one. See, Franklin figured it all out. The council built suns and saved universes. They constructed great machines for good works. But because of their choice, there was one thing they were not capable of.
I love this part.
There was one thing Reed could create that they could not. Look up at the life you made, and it shows Franklin, and it's just annihilating these Celestials. Look at the one who would sacrifice himself so that we all might live. And we see the Fantastic Four, and it's like, no. And for a moment, there were two suns that day. And then we cut to other things that are happening. So you got to skip ahead to the second to the last page, sort of little epilogue thing. Yeah. And so they're just kind of saying, like, oh, there's a generation that fall. They watch until the second sun flickered out. The light extinguished, a sign of the abandoned, left behind, the lost. Also meant a second chance. It signaled the day, a new day, a future regained. For if we live, there is hope. And then we see the Galactus kind of holding the image of Franklin, who sacrificed himself. That's how I'm taking it, at least. And so
I think that's actually him.
Is it him, or is he dead?
Yeah.
No, that's him.
So he sacrificed himself, but he actually didn't die. So like he flew into the Celestial, like with the possibility of dying, but he didn't die. The energy that he got from the younger Franklin combined with his that he used, it was able to not only help, like, because initially it was going to be, if it wasn't enough, then he would have died killing the Celestial. But the younger Franklin didn't use too much before they got with him, so he was able to kill the Celestial, but he lived.
So not as powerful, because I thought that he was dead. So I was reading this like he sacrificed himself, and I'm reading Sue, and she's crying, and then the father, Reed hugs his dad.
Well, no, that's Reed. That's Reed hugging.
Oh, it's already hugging. That's right. That's Franklin. You're right.
Older Franklin.
Yeah. Okay, so that would have clued me in. So I misinterpreted this scene. Still powerful scene. And if tomorrow, then forever, and we're seeing it on double page here, but I was reading on single, so then you just flip the page, and all I had was Fantastic Four Black, and that's where I just like stopped, and I was like,
"Woo!
Oh, damn. So obviously I misinterpreted a little bit, not as heavy, but still what the powerful part was I loved is that this read, because the whole time I was reading is like, what makes our read special? Like I always hate multiversal stuff because I feel like, oh, you just have copies in these other galaxies, like, other multiverses, and
Right.
shouldn't like our heroes be the special ones? Like, and why? And so like I was like, and they even make a point that like some of these other reads are even smarter than our read,
Hmm.
and I was like, huh, but it's because our read is the hero, the true hero. He's the one that leaves. He abandons the logical choice for family and the father, because the father's sacrifice that he learns, I think, from Franklin, who, remember, Franklin got kicked him off wherever in that world, that space time place. I don't know what that place was, that pocket in space time.
Yeah, that
And
was
then he kicked him
collapsing.
off, and he had to, yeah, and to find his way. And he's like, every boy. That's where he said every boy needs a father. All this comes full circle because now Reed's dad could be a father to Reed that he never had. Then Reed could actually raise a son properly. And all of this lies because of what he did. Because if he would have not been a good father, if he would have not taken care of his family, he could have never made Franklin. And
Exactly.
not only could he not just made Franklin like biologically, but made Franklin,
Molded Franklin into,
molded
yeah.
him. Yeah. Like, and that's what all the council couldn't see.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, bravo, Hickman.
Yes.
Bravo. That's, I don't, you can so simply write a character to be powerful, right? That's like modern comics,
Hmm.
as they do all the time. It's like, oh, this character's even more powerful. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we hate it, right? But
Right.
here was like the heart. And it was like, this is why is Reed so awesome? Not because he's the smartest Reed, not because he had the coolest powers of these other Reeds, not because he was the Reed who was melded to Doctor Doom or whatever. No, he's this Reed is the best because he loved his family and he was a good man. And I was like, ah, thank you, Hickman. Loved it. Anyways, that was my moment.
Such a
That's a
great
great moment.
moment, man. I mean, that was honestly probably the best moment. Maybe not my favorite moment, but probably easily the best moment. And that's part of the quote of, there was two sons, because the
Hmm.
older Franklin survived and the younger Franklin is there. So there's two sons.
Well, I thought, remember, like when the plan with that he does with Valerie,
Hmm.
in order to like change the timeline, they had to sacrifice themselves so that the timeline could be altered.
Right. Yes.
Um,
So, but like kind of to the point of the whole like unreliable narrator thing, like later on, and it even kind of gets repeated, that theme, like in some issues after this. But the calculation that he had, it covered basically he covered what they needed to do to change it, but they ended up performing better than his estimation. So not only did they change it, like, yeah, he was mostly
Yeah.
thought that he was supposed to die, and then that's part of the reason why when they got there, she said, by the way, I wanted to let you know you were always my favorite superhero. That was effectively her way of saying, like, this is our goodbye, because we both know this is the part where you got to go and sacrifice yourself now so everything can live and everybody can live and all of that stuff. But they ended up outperforming it. Younger Franklin basically exceeded like all the teachings that older Franklin was giving younger Franklin. He did better with it and ended up creating that. I'm going to call it an energy orb for now, because it does have
I
some.
thought, isn't it
Mhm.
like that universe that he created or that he was playing in and he was cultivating?
And that he kept in his
Kinda.
closet. Yes, but I was trying not to call it a
Yeah.
universe because of what it means
Oh, okay.
much later on down the line after Avengers
Oh,
and New
oh, okay.
Avengers. And I know you knew. I was just
Never
trying
mind.
not to
Yeah.
stoke it in Ash's
At
mind
the
again.
at this point in the timeline, it's
Yes,
universe. At this
yes.
point in the timeline.
It's a little universe. Now he ended up, because remember even that he was telling them later, because remember they were going over the plan, and he was, and the younger gosh, seriously, the younger Franklin was like, oh, hey, sorry, I ended up having to use some because I had to kill some monsters to save us earlier to buy us some time. And he was like, older Franklin was like, oh, that's okay, it should still be enough. he didn't really get to sit there and calculate how much it was. He had to just kind of trust him and then take the little universe and what was left of the energy from that universe, combine it with his, and just go straight off. But younger Franklin did so well that he had more power than what the older Franklin knew that he needed. That's why when he flew into that, remember, it was the last Sentinel, I mean, the last Celestial that he flew into. And that last one that he flew into, that was supposed to be where he only had enough to kill the Celestial and everybody lived. But he had more. So that's why he ended up staying alive.
All right.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
I
so that
gotta
was
say,
that.
yeah, this is objectively, I gotta say, probably the best scene in the whole thing because it ties back to the whole every boy deserves a father, and I, just me personally, love stories that have like a heroic father figure because I feel like that's something that gets downplayed a lot. Like like in movies, the father's always like the guy on the couch drinking the beer, watching the sport, but like this is like no, Reed as a father plays a very pivotal role in Franklin's life,
Yeah.
and
Right, and
yeah,
especially with Reed.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Like especially with Reed because he's not the natural family guy, right? He's the logic kind of like
Right.
he's the Spock character. He's just like, "Oh, I can solve this with my my intellect." And it's like, yes, you can Reed, but you need to be and I love that that's his like that's kind of his Achilles heel and that he overcomes it, here. And part of how he overcomes it is through the help of his father. And I remember when I started reading the series, and I was like, "What? Oh, I please don't. I don't want to see like Reed's father. Like, who's this character? Like, I don't. I hate when they do that in comics. Like, I hate when they put Thomas Wayne in the Batman. I was like, I don't want to see that. Like, I get that Reed did have a father at some point. He was like, but I don't want to see them like turned into like their own superhero. Like, oh, there was a Richards before. I was like, ah. But the way Hickman plays out, I'm like, I'm a believer now. You made it. Like, this guy has a purpose. He's not there just to be. Oh, we have a long lineage of superheroes. Like your great grandpappy was a super. Like I hate that stuff. But that wasn't the point here. The point was Reed needed a father, and Reed could maybe had hangups being who he was because of that absence, to which his son made it possible. And then now this Reed is different than all the other Reeds. And Lost Sheep says it pretty good. It reads the Dom Toretto. It's all about family. This was, and it hit me in the feels. And then there's a 2-page epilogue right after that, which is really kind of
hold it right there, sir.
Hold it there. Pause.
Pause it
Okay, go
right
ahead.
there. We're gonna cover that, but before we do,
Okay.
because I kept preaching that everything comes full circle in this
Yep.
story. So, Twin, I'm marking that one. I'm taking the epilogue. Tell me what your moment
Okay.
is. We'll jump to that one and then we'll do the epilogue.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay.
Wait, he already did his moment though. Aren't
did
you
it.
the only
Yep.
one that's missing?
We get
No,
two.
yeah, we're doing two. We're doing two tonight since there
Did you do one
was.
though?
I did
Yeah,
one.
yeah, he started.
No, but did you skip do one?
Yeah, I piggybacked off of his. Mine was the cosmic control symbology and all of that. How Johnny
okay.
had it and how he moved. Yep. So.
Okay, so I think this is gonna be my second one. God, there's so much here,
There's
man. There's
so
so
much.
much. That's like okay. But I think this is the best one. We talked about the first act, and then we kind of jumped to the third act. I'm gonna cover something that's kind of in the middle. So
Okay.
at this point, they're in Johnny's battleship. There's Kree, and the Kree are all over the place, and they're getting overwhelmed. And so prior to all this, though, the one thing, and it kind of threw me off. I'd have to pay attention to the pages. I'd have to look for the little then and now modifiers because there would be flashbacks. So there was a flashback where Reed and Sue meet with Galactus, and Galactus basically gives them, I'm calling it a pager, because it's like, look, you're gonna need me at some point in the coming days. When you do, use this device, and I'll come call it. And so here on the battleship, they're getting overrun by the Kree. The Kree have them all outgunned and everything. and Reed and Sue, they're like, well, we have to go to this platform. There's actually this really cool scene right here with Sue where she just goes just like John Wick mode, basically, and is like, are
Yes.
you guys going to surrender? No? Okay. Suffocates them all. And then Johnny's like lighting people on fire, telling them to get off his ship, having like a Harrison Ford Air Force One moment. Um, and it's just awesome stuff. But then anyway, it gets to the point where there's this really cool exchange between Reed and Sue. It's the very next page from the one you had up, where it's like Reed's like, before I do this, before I call Galactus, maybe I'm not thinking of everything. Maybe there's another solution. Are we sure? And then we see like this little banter between him and Sue. Sue's like, on Earth, death metal is falling from the sky. Much more will, I'm sure, trigger the effects of a nuclear winter. He said, talking about Galactus, he said a season of dying, remember? So Reed's like, early frost then? And Sue's like, way past nippy. All right, says Reed. And he goes and triggers this control device that summons Galactus. And so you see like this warp hole forming in the middle of the whole intergalactic battle. And you see, the Kree are like, oh, there's a singularity, and the Inhumans are like a hole in the heavens. And then you turn the next page, and Galactus just shows up just in the middle of this whole armada. It's like the big cavalry call moment. And Galactus is actually kind of pissed. He's like, this isn't the reason that you were supposed to call me for. Um, but it's just so cool. He just starts like taking them out. The Kree try to take him out with nega bombs. The nega bombs don't work. But then all of a sudden, and you think, okay, well, Galactus is going to be the reason they win against the Kree. What happens is the Kree end up scattering because all the Celestials show up. And Galactus is like, this is the reason that I think he says, yeah, this is why I'm here. This is the death I have foreshadowed. Mad gods have come to destroy us all. And just this whole scene, right? I mean, that's where, okay, you had like intergalactic space battle. Like I said, that was the first act of this whole climax, and it's like a really big one. Like, what's bigger than that? Oh, let's have giant mad space gods just fighting. Just have like a giant kaiju fight almost basically in space. Like, just the epicness of this, it just keeps on building. And we're not even touching the time travel element of this yet. This is just, the Celestials show up and Galactus is there meant to be a counter to them. And, we know that they actually end up killing Galactus, and then future Franklin has to come resurrect Galactus and then fight them all. But yeah, just this whole, how it goes from like just the escalation, how it goes from an already big alien invasion battle to now, oh, by the way, here's Celestials. Let's throw that giant thing in the pot. Just, it's so good.
So good, man. So I want
I
to
can't take it.
I want to point something out. One semi important part in my opinion, because you mentioned, of course, Jonathan Hickman loves his singularities. We know Jonathan Hickman loves his thing, especially if you read Hawks Pox and if you've read his Ultimate Universe stuff. With Zorn and Zorn, he loves his singularities. So you got the Kree talking about, Supremer, there's a singularity, and like you said, you've got the Universal Inhumans up there talking about a hole in the heavens. But dude, Annihilus, yes, death. Like,
that's right.
I loved it. Like, it was so simple, but it was so in character and in tune with Annihilus. Like, because that's what he wants. That's what they want. That's the currency in the negative zone is death, death, death. So when Annihilus is like, oh, a way that I could actually die, Galactus. Like I just loved, and that's the last comment before you get there, and and we see that that Galactus has been summoned. Yeah,
Yep.
man, darn good scene, twin. Darn good
It's
scene.
awesome. It's just incredible.
Oh, it's so good. So good.
I like
Mhm.
all there's like this fun little scene like where the Kree have swarmed the ship and Sue and Reed they're trying to call him and it goes to like the Thing in Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's like, "There's too many of them," and Ben's just like, "Nah, that just means you can swing and you can't miss." It's just those little moments of levity in there too. And like I said, Sue just being a badass and just like, you guys were in the wrong time and you fought with the wrong lady, and she literally just yeets a guy out of an airlock hold. Uh,
Oh yeah, that was great. That was a great moment.
so good. So Jimmy voice, so good. Yeah, that's the one right there. She just like backhandedly throws him out. She's like, okay, dear, now we have to go back to saving the day.
Yep. We got to get back to it. No, yeah, that
Yep.
was such an incredible moment. Okay. All right. It's time for me to take us home with this one. So mine is, I already mentioned it. It's the epilogue. It's what happens right after we see that Franklin was successful with, resurrecting his Galactus, which, Ash, that was one of the moments that I was talking about, made me like, it blew my mind because we're also used to Galactus having heralds. So for Franklin Richards to have a herald, and his herald, is Galactus. That's what, to me, my Galactus. I was ready to run through a wall, man. I really was. That really sent me. But to come after it, here we've got the epilogue here. And again, just to bring us full circle, when we started all of this, the very first page that we covered, the very first page that we read, if anyone's reading with us or anything like that, was a page that mirrors this. In this case, it was a younger Nathaniel Richards, who is Reed's dad, and it was a young Reed Richards who had his little red baseball cap on and, you know, looking all aesthetic with the Dale Eaglesham art. It was a very similar thing. And we have Franklin here saying, and Reed is standing in a position that his dad was, saying, "It's all right. I'll catch you." Franklin's saying, I don't think. Reed interrupts him and says, "I'm right here." And Franklin says, "This isn't how it's worked before. I didn't think about it. Let's do something else, okay?" Franklin says, "Look at me, son." Franklin looks down upon his father and he says, "It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to fail. But to say that you're not even going to try, that's unacceptable, Franklin." And he is mirroring his dad's words to him as he was on top of that house getting ready to jump. Franklin says, "Okay, I'll do my best." And then Reed says, "Are you ready?" And Franklin says, "I'm ready." And then Reed says, "Good. Now fly." That's it. It's the image of
Yeah,
Franklin flying, man.
that hit me in the feels. I had forgotten that that was actually a full circle,
Yeah.
but now I remember. But
Yeah.
I would just it was informing. I like how he put this after that whole scene because this is just a nice little snippet of Reed being that father to Franklin. The reason Franklin does the choices he made is because he had, yeah, it was beautiful.
Beautiful, man. It's beautiful.
It's awesome.
Well,
So it's
that
such a quiet moment too, compared to like all the big flashy epicness and celestials and doom and it's like just this quiet little, after everything's passed, it's just this quiet little note that mirrors the first scene at the beginning of the run.
absolutely.
Poetic.
Yeah, like, and it is. And like you said, after all of that big, great, mind-blowing, magnanimous stuff, again, he started with this being a human family moment between father and son, a message about overcoming fears, not letting, our doubt get the best of us, keeping hope alive, right? Because where, as it says at the end of the book, wherever there's hope, there's a chance for tomorrow. And I think even later on it says, wherever there's a chance for, oh no, it says it right there. And if there's tomorrow, then there's forever. And man, again, just going back to the beginning and just watching, you know, I mean, even just how Steve Epting, mirrored Dale Eaglesham's art and the positions and the face acting and all of that. It's just awesome. And again, just talking about symmetry because Hickman is he likes his symmetry. He comes from having studied some architecture. At the end of the book, we end with all this crazy madness and big stuff, and then at the beginning of the book we end with big stuff, and then we go to a very small moment at the beginning of the book. We start with this small intimate moment, and then we immediately are thrust into that crazy fight at the beginning, with the wizard. So again, Jonathan Hickman really making things symmetrical. His the beginning and how it branches from there mirrors the ending and how it tails off and trails off. So again, just him having that mind. We know he likes his graphs and all that stuff. We see it play an even bigger role when we get into Avengers and New Avengers, how he's laying things down. You see that architectural mind at play with how he starts off his stories and how he ends his stories. So again, just a master in craft, crafting, the foundation and the structure. It almost feels physical how he structures his stories to be able to build upon and then withstand all of the impacts that he sends us throughout the tale. Well, those were our moments right there. Man, there's so many more that we could talk about, and we're gonna talk about some of those ones after. So again, if you guys are catching the VOD and you're watching this on YouTube, if you're on Twitch and you're watching it after the fact, go over to Twitch if you haven't been there and hear us go into the after hours, and dig into this even more. But we're gonna give our our conclusive thoughts, wrapping this thing up to put a little bow on these last or on these two volumes. Two more volumes to go, to be clear. One more volume of Future Foundation, one more volume of Fantastic Four. Those really do start to feel a little more like earlier Fantastic Four in the sense of a lot of them are one-shot stories. Some of them just kind of tell cool tales about the Fantastic Four. Others of them start setting up things as Jonathan Hickman was going to move over into Avengers and New Avengers title to start building us up, to continue, I should say, to build us up to Secret Wars, which is, oh my gosh, if you thought this thing blew your mind,
Oh, buddy.
Secret Wars is this, but on steroid, crank, crack, like speed and ecstasy all at one time.
It's got such wild out there moments. I already know what one of my most memorable moments is for whenever we get to Secret War. I've already got it reserved. I called in the reservation a year in advance. So
Twin is ahead of schedule right now. He is marking that
I can.
moment.
It's a panel. It's one of those few when you read I mean, there are stories that stand out to me, and I've read a lot of, not as many as some people, but I've read a lot of comics. But there's this one panel, I swear I could pull it up and I can see it in my brain like like a photograph. Like I just memorized and drank in all the details of this one panel. It's so good.
Yeah, so good. Well, on that
Ah.
note,
Anyway,
Ash, why don't you throw out some of some of your final thoughts on this discussion that we've had?
Oh, I don't know how much I can even really add without feeling like I'm just hitting the same notes. This is just one of the most epic stories, and we didn't even, if you're a person who has not read this, if you're just listening in and just kind of like, oh, what's this all about? We did not even cover. This was like easily 12 issues worth of content when you consider some of the double issues and stuff,
mhm.
and we covered 4 or 5 of the moments that were like big epic, but there were so many. Most of the FF book, which is the Future Foundation, we didn't cover any of it except that end, which is I one of my moments I did. But the whole storyline that runs throughout that, which was more supporting backstories to the main Fantastic Four book, um, some really cool moments in there. I urge you, if you have not read this book, this seriously, if even if you're like, I'm not really into Fantastic Four, I get you. I was the same way. This book is so good, and you got to start from the beginning. I started from the um, was it the Dark Reign, the
Yeah.
Fantastic Four Dark Reign. It's a great moment to start and then into the Fantastic Four, and just follow the reading order that the omnibuses lay it out. I think that's the right way. You can find it online if you're not sure. If you're just reading the individual trades, just be aware that they'll package them together. Like all the Future Foundation books will be all together versus the Fantastic Four books, and sometimes they intertwine, like the House of X Powers of 10 did, and that really annoys me because of this exact reason. When you want to go back and just read it all, like could you just made it all one book and the sequential numbers so you just know? But yeah, that's not how you sell floppies, I guess, today. So, but this is seriously one of the most epic reads. If you just like Marvel comics, this is a book for you. This is a not to be missed.
I agree
I love
firmly.
that cover. Gabrielle Delato. I love that cover.
So good. Twin,
Yeah, it's good.
hit hit me with something, baby.
I'm going to give you the one downside to reading this run. If
Hmm.
this is your first Fantastic Four book and you're reading this, the one bad, the one downside is you will not find a better run. Uh, there are good runs, Mark Waid, his run gets a lot of praise. Of course, there's John Byrne. You can go back to the originals. You could even read the Matt Fraction run, but you know, I don't think that there's a better run out there of Fantastic Four than this. This is the cream de la cream. Uh, and you might think, that, oh, there's so many, like on that panel, there's like a dozen characters, between all the kids and the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and Dragon Man. You're like, oh, no, there's no have you heard us talking for the last hour or two? Like, yes, there are character moments. Characters get their spotlight. We haven't even talked about them all. There's so many. They're like Bentley, freaking my goodness, little Bentley,
Yes, love Bentley.
a 10-year-old kid. That's like my hero. Like, it's so amazing, and it's not. You know, some people get intimidated by like really long running. This is not a very long, unfortunately. I don't think it's long enough, but it's not very
It's
long.
not.
Like, it really isn't. It's under like 50 issues. So, I mean, it's absolutely worth your time. And like Ash said, if you're not a Fantastic Four, I started reading Fantastic Four when I first got into comics, and then I kind of just outgrew them. I don't know if that's the right word for it. Lost interest maybe is better. Um, but then I got back into reading with this one, and I started reading the Dan Slott run, which is okay, but compared to Hickman, it's like comparing bologna to a T-bone. Uh, but yeah, this just kind of just restoked and reinvigorated my love for the Fantastic Four. Uh, yeah, like I said, the one downside is, as of right now, it doesn't get any better than this. Everything else kind of goes second place is the best that you can hope for after this. This is it. So
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. You know, I've read I haven't read a lot of Fantastic Four. I've read this is the longest run that I've read easily. I've read a little bit. Yeah, I read some of Dan Slott. Gosh, I knew what I was getting into when I was going from that. Um, they let Peter Gabriel have a little tiny little mini series. Most recently, that was the best, most recent Fantastic Four I had read, even above, the Chip Zdarsky book that they gave him earlier on during the Krakoan era of the X-Men, where they had those two books cross
oh
over.
yeah, the X-Men Fantastic. Yeah, I remember that. That
Hmm.
was a pretty good little series.
Yep, yeah, Fantastic Four with FF. But even with all that, um, and I'm gonna go and gonna read some more. I've read, and of course, obviously, like I've read like way older stuff. Like I've read some of the and Jack Kirby and Stan Lee stuff, the classic stuff. Of course, like the spirit of it is right in those books. But there's just nothing like this. There's just nothing quite like this. And
There's not. This is like Zach said it right. Like I think this is gonna ruin me for any other Fantastic Four. It's kind of like when I read Frank Miller's Daredevil. I've never been able to read Daredevil. That was my first Daredevil run that I ever read was Frank Miller's Daredevil, and nothing has ever lived up to it. You know, it's I just don't buy Daredevil except the Zdarsky run. I've been I was happy with until the Devil's Reign nonsense. But the first volume of Zdarsky's run, extremely happy with. I mean, look how many years it took. It took like 40 years for Daredevil to finally have another good series. You know,
Have you read the Brubaker run?
No, but I did buy it.
Oh, okay.
So it's in my collection. Thanks for reminding me.
I haven't read it yet, but I'm wanting to read all the.
I'm sure that'll be decent. Yeah.
Now that I'm in this
I
whole
do love
Brubaker exploration phase of my life, I'm wanting to read like everything he's written because I like books. I like books. I like characters from the big two, so I like reading the stuff that he's done.
I love the Marvel universe. I grew up as a Marvel fanboy.
Yeah.
But when you start off, like what I'm trying to say is that you hit the nail on the head. I think when you start off with the best of the best, you know, my first Thor books were the Walt Simonson Thor. My first Daredevil books were the Frank Miller Daredevil. My first X-Men books were the Chris Claremont X-Men. All of which have been ruined for me. I cannot read anything else because I read the best of the best, and nothing lives up to it, with some exceptions here and there. But
yeah,
it's more of a feeling it's going to be the same thing here.
Yeah, definitely.
Indeed. But yeah, you know, along with that, on that note, it's just and that's you know where we're at with this. You know, we've come to the end of the main story with this. You know, we'll knock out you know the rest of the remaining issues because from here, as I've mentioned, we go straight over into Avengers and New Avengers, and the title of the very first New Avengers. Can I pull it up? Is okay. No, I'm not gonna pull it up in time. But it's called Everything Dies. And you know, maybe like upon first hearing that, especially after the hope and everything that you get at the end of this, you're like, why would it be called Everything Dies? But between what was going on in the greater Marvel universe and kind of a little bit of how we're led over into things from the last few issues of this, which is really cool. You know, it's interesting. I'm like thinking about this now. So they just did a reprint of Fantastic Four 52. Fantastic 52 was, or not a reprint, but a facsimile edition. Oh, look, yeah, go ahead and show them what it is.
Yeah, they didn't even or maybe they did. I just didn't see it. But I saw this at my LCS last week, and I was like, heck yes, must get this.
Fantastic Four 52, first appearance.
The one bit of Fantastic Four lore that Hickman could not squeeze into here was Black Panther.
Yes, but the interesting thing is, as I remember, a few issues later, as he's transitioning over into New Avengers and Avengers, Black Panther plays a huge role. He actually takes the time, and this is where like Black Panther he's not the king of Wakanda anymore. Sure, he's the queen of Wakanda, and she's the Black Panther. This is where Jonathan Hickman takes the time to make T'Challa the king of the dead, building upon the lore of the necropolis and everything, and that plays a huge role in Avengers and New Avengers and going on over into Secret Wars. So I just like the parallel of like, okay, Black Panther doesn't fit into this main story I got, and I got to keep this main story that I got as pure as possible. But hey, y'all, give me a few more issues because this Future Foundation thing, I started it because I'm into it. Give me a few more issues of that. Give me a few more issues of Fantastic Four because I got to do some things in there too that I want to do a little bit of homaging, some honor, and I got to set some things up, and then I'll move on to the next one. And they were like, wish granted, and those things really, really, really paved the way for how much wider and crazier this story continues to get and build. So, thanks so much, everybody who joined us along this journey. We are going to dig into those last few books. And then from there, I hope my two friends, are still have their seats in the upright position and have their safety restraint belts on, because this flight is gonna go higher and get bumpier as we roll over into Avengers and New Avengers. Everybody who joined us via YouTube, thank you so much for watching the VOD. Again, go over to twitch.tv/Skip and Tosh. Check us out live on Thursday nights, 9:30 Pacific time, where we jump in and we talk about this. We are wrapping this up. It's the end of this video. Now we're going to dive even deeper and talk about some other things. Come over there and join us. Even if it's the VOD, it'll still be up. Go check it out. Twin, thank you so much for joining me. Always great to have you. Ash Von Comics, all hope lies in Ash. Thank you so much for joining
Yes.
me on this ride too, buddy. We appreciate it. And we will see y'all on the next one. Later.